Joined now by HuskerOnline, Sean Callahan. Sean, good morning. Well, we'll go to Nebraska here in a second because let's go back to last Friday. Evan Cooper was announced that he had resigned from Nebraska. John Butler, not official yet, but it appears to be the next man up at that role. Are you surprised that it happened this quickly when it came to John Butler in replacing Evan Cooper, which is not official yet, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just the way it all developed, that was a surprise, but it just tells you that behind the scenes, this had probably been going on for a few weeks where Matt Rule had been putting out feelers, looking for names and replacements. And, Sip would attest to this too. You could just, being around Evan Cooper, now that we look at things now back in June, something just didn't feel right. I don't know what it was, but, I wouldn't be surprised if Evan Cooper, knew, for a while that he might be done in June. I mean, a few weeks in, because you get the sense Matt Rule definitely had been working on this for a few weeks now. And then they closed the book officially here at the end of June when the recruiting kind of closed up here for the summer.
So you didn't think something felt right as far back as the satellite camps in Belton, Texas and Houston, Texas? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, just some of the side conversations we had with Evan Cooper and just his body. Someone just, when you think about it today, and we have that advantage now, something just didn't seem, I don't know what it was, Sip, but I think you'd be on the same page probably too.
Yep.
As we look at things now, he had this urgency or something about him that just didn't feel normal for some reason.
It didn't. You're right. So have you been able to size up this hire of John Butler, which, by the way, Jake mentioned, it isn't official yet. We expect it to be official today, I would think. But what do you think? And then there's no snags that I know of, so I wouldn't worry about it. But what is what are your impressions of John Butler?
Well, I mean, he's an accomplished guy. He was very close to becoming the Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator, and then decided to get back in, to try to get back into college football or take a step away from the NFL. But I mean, you go back to, he was the defensive coordinator at Penn State. He's coached at South Carolina, Minnesota, Houston Texans, Buffalo Bills. So he's got a deep resume, and he's been college football coaching since the 90s. So on that, I mean, he's got more experience than Evan Cooper had. And, it's a guy that clearly wants to be a defensive coordinator again. That's why he left the NFL. And I think if you can connect the dots with Tony White and him almost getting a head coaching job a year ago, that this is a guy now on the staff that would be a logical candidate to be a defensive coordinator. And, Evan Cooper, people forget, he kind of carried a coordinator tag, if I'm not mistaken. He was
passing game coordinator.
Passing game coordinator. So it wouldn't be surprising at all if John Butler will carry a similar title.
Right.
Joined by Sean Callahan. Sean, Nebraska's in the top 4 for offensive linemen, of a 5-star lineman, David Sanders Jr., along with Ohio State, Tennessee, and Georgia. What are their realistic chances in landing Sanders?
It's a long shot, there's no doubt. But they weren't on his final 6 list. I was with David Sanders in May in Nashville. We interviewed him. And then he put out his top 6, and Nebraska wasn't in it. South Carolina and I believe Clemson was on that list. They're not anymore, in Alabama. But now Nebraska gets in the Final 4 grouping. And a lot of credit should go to Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola has been the player that's pushed the recruitment of David Sanders and the relationship that they've had from back when Dylan was a Georgia commit. Mm-hmm. And David, I'll never forget, said this to me. He's like, the reason I'm looking at Nebraska is because Dylan Raiola was there. He goes, if the number 1 quarterback in the country and a 5-star can go there, I need to look at this place. And Dylan and I have talked a lot. It's a long shot, guys. I mean, I would be shocked if Nebraska pulled this one out. But it is a victory that they at least have made his Final 4.
Sean, you had an interesting nugget in your Monday column, your weekly Monday column, that you laid out 10 people from Matt Rule's original staff that are no longer on that staff, including, key recruiting department personnel. What is the impact of that level of turnover, of that level, we'll call it staff movement?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more that goes on in an operation than most fans understand, and that's why I laid this all out, because I started to look at things, with Evan Cooper, and then Anthony Crispino, who just joined the staff in February, has moved on, and he was the general manager at TCU, came in here in more of a director of operations role, before spring football started. He's moved on, but when you come in like Matt Rule and you pretty much remove everybody in the previous staff other than maybe 5 people, it's a lot of people you got to bring in. And, it's when you compare it to the Scott Frost era or even the Mike Riley era, those guys were in college football coaching. So they just kind of transitioned most of their people from Oregon State or Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Rule had been out of college coaching since 2019. Mm-hmm. So he had to make all new hires, bring in some new people, and let's be realistic, some are going to work and some aren't. And I think that's what this really kind of shows, is like they've made some moves behind the scenes, because not everyone's a fit at Nebraska. But yeah, it's over $1 million in salaries that have moved in and out. And what I find fascinating is obviously Sean Padden still runs their personnel department. Mm-hmm. But you've got a number of guys like Vince Ginta, Keith Williams, Ryan Callahan, and Avery Gossett. They were retained staffers. So that recruiting, kind of the guts of that recruiting department are all people that were retained from the previous staff, led by Vince Ginta and now Keith Williams, who moved into the role that Omar Hales held before.
Yeah, the previous staff, meaning the Frost staff, which is interesting. Now, the person that wasn't on Frost staff, can you, Sean, put in perspective the importance of Sean Padden? You mentioned Sean Padden.
There's 2 key lieutenants in the behind-the-scenes department for Matt Rule, Dr. Susan Elza, who is the chief of staff, and then Sean Padden, who oversees and runs the personnel department. And, his relationship with Rule goes back many, many years. So, yeah, he's as important as anybody in that operation, as he oversees and runs that personnel department. He oversees and runs NIL and is the key liaison to 1890.
Sean, you're back from vacation. What are you most interested? I mean, where do you shift your attention in terms of your coverage of Nebraska football? What's on your mind today?
Well, just the media days starting up everywhere. I mean, we'll zone in on, I believe, Colorado. Do they go today? Mm-hmm. Aren't you guys doing your shows in Vegas right now?
We should be. No,
Sean.
Hey, Sean, Colorado is today in Vegas. That's right.
Did Bush have a late night at the blackjack table? I don't hear him.
No. I would have been no, I wouldn't. I'd have been down at the Golden Nugget on the $2 tables. I'd have been down there, Sean.
The $2 table.
$2 tables, yes. That's more of my speed.
It lasts longer there.
I'm the guy that's like going, I'm going to split them. You're like, you don't split fours, buddy. That's not what you do here.
The whole table just walks off.
Exactly. It'd be a walk. Why is he all by himself again? He's jacked up the whole
deal. The guy with the orange shirt.
Yes. Can you see him? Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Sean.
But
So that was the night, Sean. I gave you full credit yesterday. That was a great job on that article on all those names and everything. That's a lot. That's a lot of research to do. No one just has those off the top of their heads. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Coach. Appreciate that.
Sean, go ahead, Sean.
The media day starting up. I mean, I'm sure we'll get a little bit more out of Colorado today, and for Nebraska, this hire. We're not going to hear from Rule. At least we don't think until Indianapolis. So there'll definitely be a lot of questions for Matt Rule the next time we get a chance to visit with him.
Sean, always good stuff. Thanks for the time. We will chat with you again next week.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
HuskerOnline, Sean Callahan.